everyone, and welcome back once again to the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. I've got the usual crew here today. We have Josh Torres.
Coming to you in 50 hertz.
Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Galizio.
I'm the ghost of frames long past.
And Xiameng Wu.
Hello.
We're nearing the end of May. It's been kind of a quiet period in terms of releases, a little bit less quiet in terms of news. We've actually got three sort of announcements here to talk about that are actually quite interesting. Not mega stories in the terms of what we might see in the E3 quote-unquote months of June, but some interesting things to look forward to in the upcoming years for new projects, new works from new games that we're looking forward to play in the future. But in terms of actual releases, let's not sugarcoat it. It's been a little bit dead, which is kind of okay because it gives us time to talk about games that are releasing in other genres. We got a lot of games on our backlog. I still have to get to Stranger of Paradise. Other people have get into other games that are released this year during the crowded February time period that we weren't able to get to. This might be another podcast that is a little bit news heavy, and it might be something that we end up having to talk about a little bit outside of our normal purview, but it should be okay. We'll just kind of go through and see what ends up leading to natural discussion here. At the outset here, one thing that I will mention is that during the last podcast, we talked about that we were expecting news on the Final Fantasy IX TV show showing. We had some discussion and some statements saying that we were going to get the kind of the revelation or the, our first look at this at the Licensing Expo, which was held in the last week of May, in the last few days. Now, at the time of recording, that expo has concluded, at least the actual event, with some online features still like trickling out. And as far as I can tell, nothing has been reported from the Final Fantasy IX show that we were expecting. So not sure why that is, but instead of just leaving it empty air, I figured just call it out right at the start here, saying we were interested in hopefully reporting on that this week, but as far as I can tell, nothing has come out from that. So we'll keep our eyes peeled. Adam, you've got the eagle eyes for this stuff, so just let me know if you see anything, and we'll report on it as soon as anything is made public.
So specifically, Animation Magazine, which is a website, I suppose, they had an interview with the vice president of the Paris-based animation group, Cybergroup Studios, who is kind of like heading this show. And in this interview, he said specifically, our most recently developed shows, Digital Girl, the McFire Family, Press Start, and Final Fantasy IX will be presented for the first time. Now, this is to like industry people at an exposition, so I wasn't maybe like expecting like a fully fledged like trailer, but I was thinking maybe we'll get a render or a logo or a production still.
I was hoping for like the good old days, like in old E3s where someone has like really shitty like phone camera footage.
Yeah. Because this isn't like a public like expo. It was more like a convention. I guess it's called Licensing Expo.
Hence the name like Licensing Expo.
Yeah, but it was more like a industry convention. I thought maybe we'd get like something, but not yet. I haven't checked this out myself, but I've heard that like the exposition kind of continues online for a bit, so maybe something will pop up. But I wouldn't put my hopes up. But we'll see it eventually.
Yeah, we'll report on it as soon as we see something. All right, as I mentioned, it's kind of been a quiet time for game releases, but we're going to start out here with a game that was recently announced that we kind of teased, or was teased by the developer and publisher last week that we covered on the podcast then, and that was from FuRyu. They're the publisher. The developer is Three Rings, and they had discussed and introduced Project Try, which we had talked at the time that Sal over at Gamatsu had kind of reasoned was short for a project called Trinity Trigger. And we learned that, yes, that is indeed the case. And we got all of our first new details, screenshots, and trailer for the upcoming Trinity Trigger. We even got a release date for Japan that it is releasing in September of this year, September 15th. Get it out of the way at the start. There is no formal announcement at this time of any sort of English localization, but we do have 2 articles up on the website about the announcement of Trinity Trigger from FuRyu. And in addition to these announcements, they did also provide a demo available to play. I don't know if this demo is available on every console. This game is slated to release for Nintendo Switch and Sony consoles. And we're going to open up with this because Josh was actually able to get into the demo and played it for us. So obviously we'll kind of go into like what the website shows and what the trailer discusses in a moment. But I figure we just hand it over to the person who's gone hands-on. So, Josh, I don't know how much time you put into this, but you were able to go ahead and play Trinity Trigger for us. Just kind of what are your thoughts and what is the game? And just give us the lowdown.
Yeah, before I get into it, like just to expand on what you were saying. So it's a limited time demo, and they're gonna have it'll be open till June 30th, and then they're gonna have a questionnaire in Japanese to offer feedback on the game. It's a weird situation where since the demo is unrated, it's hard to get it on a Sony console because for some reason Sony has like a mandatory policy in the Japanese stores. They've had it on it for quite a while, for a few years now, where it has to be at least priced at 100 yen for like a free demo. It's just one of their policies because it's an unrated game, and since it hasn't received like a Seto rating yet. Seto is like the rating in Japan, like kind of like the ESRB. It's treated like if it's an unrated, that it's assumed that it could be like the highest rating. So it's like it's more that 100 yen rating is put as a failsafe. And like I had like 400 yen in my Japanese PSN account, but I can't even access those funds because the funds that it wants has to be like taken from like a Japanese credit card as like to prove that you're over 18. So that there's like weird barriers to that. Meanwhile, you can easily get the demo for free on the Nintendo eShop, the Japanese store. So that's how I got it and played it. It's very easy, very simple. And then for the platforms, like you said, it's coming to PlayStation 5, 4, and the Switch. These are the confirmed platforms that was shown by the official website, the trailer. There was a weird maybe printing error in the Famitsu magazine issue which unveiled this, which had PC as one of like the platforms listed. But as far as we understand, that like that might have just been a printing error on their end, and like it's not coming to PC because it hasn't been shown at all on the official website and any like Japanese news outlets for this game.
Yeah, just to be like clear, when Famitsu like shows the platforms, or like these little like banners on the bottom of the page that just say like PlayStation, Switch, PC. So I could see it like being, they just accidentally included the PC little flag there when it didn't need to be. It wasn't like in like the title or the text. It was just this little flag at the bottom of the page that just says PC. Yeah. And I think they've done it before where they've inadvertently had like the wrong platforms listed.
They've done it a couple times.
I mean, I'm sure regardless, if somebody picks this up for localization, it's very likely it'll get a PC version eventually. Because that's just pretty normal these days, but it's not really confirmed yet. But anyways, the short of it is, and feel free to jump off from here, that this looks to be like a Seiken Densetsu sort of style of game. Or in other words, mana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a pretty like interesting game where like the appeal of it, like the primary appeal of it, I think to a lot of people is for people who are missing like local co-op play from JRPGs. Like I know a lot of people were bummed at the recent Trials of Mana remake that came out, that like they took out local co-op, and that was like a lot of like the allure of that game to people, because people have fond memories of like playing with their siblings or friends, playing Secret of Mana together, because it was such a unique thing back in the day that you didn't see much in those types of games. So Trinity Trigger is the action RPG where you control, you have 3 playable characters as far as the demo is concerned. You have Cyan, Elise, and Xanthus. And at the very start, you only control Cyan, and then you're just getting acclimated to the controls where you can move around. It's like an open field area, kind of like a snowy forest that you're, like the tutorial area. So you're moving around it in 3D. And then you're introduced like to a dodge roll mechanic, and you can dash while you're moving around. So you have like 2 bars by your character portrait down at the bottom. You have your typical HP bar, which is green, and then underneath it, it's kind of like a almost like a stamina mana bar in blue underneath it. And this is like kind of like how it gets really weird how this is handled, because every time you attack, Cyan has a sword at first. It'll deplete this bar, and then your normal attack chain it goes up to 3 moves. So each of those 3 moves are like abilities in that move set that you could swap out for another like alternate ability. So you can like switch up your move set, and each of those abilities cost like a certain amount of mana. And when you deplete that mana gauge completely, like all of your attacks will do virtually no damage. Like they'll have very very reduced damage. So you want to obviously make sure that you have a decent amount of those like always saved up, and they regenerate pretty fast, almost like a stamina bar in other action RPGs. So it's not like you're waiting forever to get like this mana bar back or anything.
As someone who hasn't played the Mana series, this might be a silly comparison, but it's what I thought of. So this game is completely being marketed as a 3-player co-op game from like a not quite an isometric perspective, but from like a vertical perspective. I thought of Crystal Chronicles. That's the thing that I thought of in terms of painting it from your mind's eye. Mm-hmm. You're looking down at the overview at the field with the 3 characters. Sword, bow, and axe basically are their weapon sets, and they have like different color coordinations for like what identifies that character across this field as they team up on enemies and things like that. Like, oh, this is kind of like Crystal Chronicles, only with a much more quick combat system, a lot more action focused.
Yeah, it's only local co-op play that they revealed that when the full game comes out. So you get up to 2 other players with you to play, but it's only locally, no online co-op, unfortunately. Which is a bummer. If it ever does get a PC release, hopefully it plays nicely with Steam Remote Play if it does happen. But
I guess
what's up?
We could probably talk about that later in news if we want to. I don't know.
Well, no, go for it. What did you want to say?
Just the newest Steam Deck OS update adds proper remote play support together for it.
Okay, like even like prop like was remote play like broken or something before the Steam OS?
I don't think it was officially supported yet until.
Okay. Well, yeah. So hopefully, like I've never tried it. I hear from people that it's decent, but hopefully this works well with that, because like I would love to play with other people. This game, I think
assuming it actually does get a PC release.
Yeah. So after that tutorial area and you're kind of introduced to these systems, you understand that when you dash, it'll consume that mana bar. When you do a dodge roll, it'll like halt like the regen of that stamina bar like momentarily. After that area, you get your second party member, Elise. She has a bow, and also Cyan gets another weapon type. He gets a bow as well, so you can switch between sword and bow for him. And then in the meantime, Elise will only have a bow. Same thing. You start getting introduced to like, oh, you can swap out moves. So for example, Elise's like normal move chain with her bow is like she does like a normal bow shot, and then like she goes to like a more like a machine gun type of like consecutive bow shots in her second skill. And like her third one is like a powered up like shot from a distance. So from what I remember, when like switching up her skills, let's say I switch out her second skill and third skill with the other skill, her second skill turns into like an arrow rain type of situation where she like shoots up in the air and then a rain of arrows come down. And then her third alternate skill in that demo was like, instead of like the powered up shot from a distance, she'll like hop towards the enemy and close the distance really fast, and then fire off like a powered up shot. So it's like good for like mobility if you want to get up close to your enemy.
So when you're playing this demo, are you playing like? Sorry if you explain this, but I'm trying to paint the picture in my head. Are you like playing as all 3 characters and toggling between them, or are you playing? Because if it's only local co-op, then obviously you're not playing with others. But if the game is designed for 3 players, I'm just wondering how this all worked out.
Yeah. You can switch freely between the characters on the fly. When you hop off one character to another, the AI will take over the other character.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, the AI isn't great, but
surprise.
What you have, yeah. But the switching is pretty instantaneous, and it doesn't like how our sometimes JRPGs, when you like switch to a character, they'll like occupy the same space that your current playable character is in, so there's no repositioning.
Right.
This one, were you gonna say something?
No, just like modern East games or whatever.
Yeah.
Just swap right in.
Yeah, and this one you actually like hop over to the position of the other character. So when you switch and they're like at the other side of the enemy, you'll actually start there when you start.
Final Fantasy VII remake, which invented this.
They invented it. So that gives like interesting situations, like in the boss battle that you faced later on in this demo, like it's kind of like a golem structure type deal, and you can easily like surround it and like take control of like one character from one side and then switch over to the other character on another side for that, and it kind of works out to your benefit because you also have like a super powered up move that you can initiate when your weapon glows, and then you can initiate like a powered up attack from there. I guess I should also mention that this game also has like these Pokemon-esque creatures called triggers. They were actually designed by some Pokemon designers on them, and these creatures transform into the actual weapons that your main characters use, sort of like the Soul Eater manga and anime. That's kind of the reasoning why like these weapons are so special, and you can do like fancy things with them and switch up their abilities. And
They also talk.
super moves. And they also talk, yeah. So this is so as you're exploring out in the field, taking out enemies together with your two characters, you're kind of getting the feel of like, okay, this is definitely feels like a Seiken Densetsu type game where everyone has like their own independent like action or ability to move around if you're playing locally, and they have like some form of like customizing in like their weapon move sets, and like you can even switch up super moves, I think, but there weren't any alternate super moves that they offered in the demo. You eventually visit a town. It's your typical town in RPGs. It has an inn. You can buy like new stuff, like consumables, crafting materials. You'll get introduced to the crafting later on when you meet a blacksmith later on in the dungeon, and this blacksmith has like big bunny ears on her, so she seems really funny. And then you can like slot in sort of like materia into your weapons, but they're more like passive like stat boosts, what I can tell. So like you can craft like these little like red like colored orbs and slot them into like your characters, but from what I understand, it only like boosts their passive stats on it. Also, there were like save crystals in the towns where you can also upgrade like your individual abilities with technique points. So if you want to like have certain moves in your move set do more damage, you can power them up there. And then it's you go eventually venture forth into another open field, into a dungeon. The dungeon area has like your typical set of environmental puzzles to get treasure chests. You get up to like the top floor of it, and you fight this boss. And then the interesting thing is like, even though the demo technically ends there, it says thank you for playing and everything, and it actually unlocks a lot more content after you complete the demo. It unlocks the third playable character, and then it unlocks like new weapon categories. So at first you only have the sword and the bow for Cyan, and then Elise only has the bow. After you complete the demo, the third playable character has fists and like a poleaxe, and then Elise gets her second weapon type, which is the spear. And from what I understand, as you like progress through the game, everyone will be able to get access to every weapon type. There's like a total of 8 weapon types, so there's a lot of like customizability of like how you want your characters to, what weapons you want them to main, and what their moveset will be like with that weapon. So there could be some interesting like chemistry you can have, like say when you're playing with other people with you, you can like form like a strategy of like, okay, we want to tackle like this encounter like with these weapons and these skills because they synergize well with each other. I don't exactly know.
The
Go for
eight
it.
weapon type thing is also similar to Secret of Mana,
Mm-hmm.
and also the Adventures of Mana as well. Also, just quick mention that like the entire soundtrack for this game is being done by the Secret of Mana Trial of Mana composer, which is Hiroki Kikuta,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently it's going to be pretty sizable. Famitsu interview said it's like 60 to 70 tracks,
Oh wow.
so like that's a lot of new Kikuta music if you really like that from Secret of
Yeah.
Mana and Trials of Mana. So
Yeah.
so
Like I
definitely
don't.
going for that. Definitely going for that Mana like vibe for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're definitely aiming to be a spiritual successor. I don't exactly know how well this game will like hold up like as a solo experience. Like Like as I was playing through the game and like knowing that this game will have some form of co-op, I didn't know if it was local or online yet. I was just playing. I was like thinking, it's like this is okay as like a solo experience, but I think I would really enjoy this playing with other friends and like sharing this experience together and going through the campaign together.
A
And
lot of
like,
games are of this sort of style. There's a good number of games that are just a lot funner when you're a lot more fun when you're playing with friends.
Mhm.
Rather than
And an
solo.
average game
So-
in local co-op, or even nowadays with easy prevalence of voice chat and stream sharing and things like that, like a mediocre game can be an absolute blast in co-op. I don't know.
yeah. So I think that's why I'm like kind of crossing my fingers that this does get like a PC Steam release, and if it gets localized, and it seems like it'd be a really fun time with other people. But yeah, that was the demo's like barely like if you're like exhausting content and it's like maybe 2.5 to 3 hours, it's like a decent chunk of like of a game that was barely announced, and like the story bits in it are like very unfinished, like they're like kind of like small vignettes. I don't think that's how the full game will present these story scenes. These were just like very quick like vignette backdrops of like, okay, this and this happened, and then this person joined, and then there's very very quick like this is sort of what happens, and it seems like it's gonna be this takes place early on in the game, so it doesn't really spoil anything. But yeah, that's what I got to check out of Trinity Trigger. It ran fine on the Switch. It was 60 FPS pretty consistently on it without much drops. And
I guess
yeah,
one thing that I'm not sure that you covered is one of the things we kind of talked last week during the tease when this was Project Try that
Mhm.
FuRyu, like they talked about like some of the talent behind the game, and they talked about these triggers, spirit-like beings that actually do have art by Pokemon illustrators. I watched the gameplay trailer, I just didn't see them being very prevalent.
They're the
So
weapons.
yeah, they're the weapons. Those
Okay.
triggers like transform into the weapons, and then like but in story cutscenes, like they'll transform back to the Pokemon like creatures, and then like can like actually participate in dialogue, and they can speak and everything.
Yeah, they can talk, so they are like legitimate just
They're
characters
Digimon.
in the game now. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly like if you'll meet more throughout the story, or like how, if there are more how they play a role in the story. It'll be interesting to see. I think. Oh yeah. I'm like looking through the gallery of our Trinity Trigger screenshots and artwork, and one of the artwork that we do have is the blacksmith girl with like the big bunny ears.
Yeah,
So,
the website had a bunch of like other character art. By the way, the character art is being done by Rate Kazuma, who did
And it's
some
amazing. It's really good.
some Xenoblade art, but Xenoblade is kind of a mix of artists, but a lot of like Brigadine, Stranger of Sword City, if you're familiar with these games.
yeah, well,
Very good artist.
Yeah,
I will
they've
say
done,
that the 2D art is better than the 3D models. The 3D models are fine.
I feel like that's true for a lot of these mid-budget JRPG
but yeah, when I look at
games.
the visuals of
It's
this
really
game,
good. Go ahead.
yeah, when I look at the visuals of this game, like it reminds me of like a mix between like the Alliance Alive and Bravely Default 2. Like thinking like if the Alliance Alive got like a follow up in the same vein as like how Bravely Default, but the Bravely Default 2, like it's like almost a natural evolution of what a scaled up the Alliance Alive would look like to me when I look at this game. But it's like it's not bad. It's just like it's very simplistic and effective. So I like, I'm not really like one to like look for like super graphical fidelity from like, because I already have my expectations set from like a FuRyu game, for better or worse. Like, so it doesn't really bother me that much. I also wanted to commented like for Raita, like they've a lot of people also associate them with certain character artwork from the Fate Grand Order mobile game, because they've done like a lot of popular characters. Like,
Anyways,
Raito.
I think I cut myself off on my first comment. They uploaded a bunch of characters to the website. Like, here are all the characters you'll meet, but they actually haven't like introduced them yet. So we have all the art, but
Yeah, and you'll see that there's this 2D artwork when they're like talking with each other, like through like the dialogue segments. So that's cool.
Hey,
I mean,
not every game does that. Like, I kind of wish like Triangle Strategy did that, because a lot of times, unless you go into the menu, a lot of that 2D art you just don't see when you're playing that game.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
I enjoy when they have the portraits in place during dialogue and things like that. And as I said at the top, this is already has a release date in Japan of September 15th. There is no news or announcement yet of an English localization at this point. And with that, we'll kind of go on into other games that people have been playing this week. As we've said, it's kind of been a slow period. But one game that did release this week that Josh did tease about last week was a newest title from Team Ladybug. I hope I get this right, Drainus. Now, I don't know much about this other than that Team Ladybug, they also did that.
Wonder
Yeah,
Labyrinth
the
game.
Deed Lit, and did they do the Toho game?
Yes.
So yeah, just tell us about we haven't been covering it on our site, but we've been covering other games from the developer. Just I guess we'll
It's
just let
not
you keep on going
yeah.
forward and what your experience with Drainus has been.
Yeah,
Drainus.
the main reason we didn't really cover this game because it's not an RPG for like their other games. It's actually a shoot 'em up. It's like
Shmup.
yep, and it's,
People hate the word shmup, so I just had to say shmup once.
We apologize.
The name is like kind of derivative of like Gradius, but this game has like a gimmick to it. So much like Gradius, it's like a 2D shmup, and where you can like level up like your moves and like as you gain more power ups, you have like you can set a path of like what kind of power ups you want. Every time you can collect the power up item in it. In this game, you have like a drain or absorb mechanic where like incoming laser shots fired at you, not physical shots. You can actually like absorb them, and then you'll fire them like Jehuti style from like Zone of the Enders, where like light beams come out of you. The more shots you drain, the more powerful and more shots you'll like reflect back at those light projectiles. Throughout the game, you gain like not necessarily experience points. I guess it's more like kind of like currency. You kind of fill up like these bottles at the top right corner as you're like progressing to the level and doing a good job. And then you'll like fill up these bottles that you can use at an in-game shop in the game when you just pause, and then you can like buy like moves and power ups that will you can add onto your arsenal. So let's say like I fill up like 2 of these bottles and I want like a certain shot type that lets me fire up and down vertically as my next power up. So I can buy this and it costs like say 2 bottles, and I can slot it into my ship, but I'm free to dictate like at what point I gain this power up. So at first when you're like starting out the game, like you only have maybe like 3 like slots to like slot power ups in, and then you can gradually like expand those slots up to like 6, I think. And then so every time you gain a power up, you'll like unlock a new you'll progress this like slot system. So say I have a laser beam, a bomb, an attack multiplier at like the first 4 slots. But say I want this laser beam power up sooner, I can actually slot that into an earlier slot, like say to the first power up slot. So whenever the first time I get a power up item, it'll switch to the laser beam immediately, and then after that I get my second one, it'll power up again into whatever is into my second power up slot, and maybe that'll be the bomb. So it gives you a lot of flexibility over what kind of like playstyle you want to go for, and also gives you flexibility on like when you want these items available to you as you're progressing through the game.
How's the music?
It's really good.
Swamp
It's
music has to
excellent.
be good.
Yep,
Okay.
Team Ladybug continues to really kill it with their soundtracks. It's the level. It only has like 6 stages, but it does a really cool thing that I won't spoil at the end of your first playthrough. That really incentivizes you to go through it again on your second playthrough. It's a much more difficult version of the stages that you went through, but there's a reason why. The basic story premise is that I forgot the name of the main character already, but you're like on the run from the Space Federation that's trying to acquire like this experimental aircraft that you're on. They sort of like kind of backstab you, and you're like, oh, I gotta get the hell out of here. But then like one of like the people with you is like saying, no, this is a good chance for you to like kind of dismantle like the core of this like corrupt Space Federation. And then but like the main character's like sister is also part of that Space Federation, so there's like a lot of like tension between them, saying, I don't want to like go against you and whatever. in it. So there is like a decent story, like in the way it develops in it, surprisingly enough. And there are like these floppy disks collectibles that you could collect to gain more like recordings of like lore in it. So it fleshes out the story even more. I know a lot of people who play it will say, "Oh, it's the save data icon."
I was
see
about to say, like, a lot of
disk.
people play it as like, why am I collecting save buttons?
Oh no, yes. But yeah, it's very responsive. It's cool as hell. If you're a fan of shmups, I definitely say give it a go. Support Team Ladybug. They continue to do really cool stuff. It's not that long. Like it's like a first playthrough for me. Like barely took an hour and a half, but then another playthrough took a similar amount of time, if not a little less. And then from then on, you can get like the rest of the collectibles that you missed and tried like harder difficulty modes. So it's not like the
A
longest
lot of
game,
shmups are like that.
but yeah,
Or you might have like 6 stages or whatever, 8
Yeah.
stages maybe, and then it's
Yeah.
just replay, harder difficulties, whatnot.
Most shut-ups is all about trying to beat it with one credit, like never die or don't use a continue. That's
yeah, they
all
have
I
a
Did you just
mode,
call it
yeah.
a shut up?
Just shut up.
That's what I heard.
They have
yeah, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, they do have a difficulty mode where you die in one shot in it. I guess I forgot to mention one more thing, like what happens when you actually take damage in this game. Like if you're just playing it normally, when you're playing it normally, you can actually like withstand shots as long as you have like a power up on you. So like say like as long as you have 3 power ups on you that unlocks like 3 of your arsenal. So that means you can like withstand up to 4 shots in it. Like the first 3 shots will like take away each power up, and then like obviously the final one, if you don't have a power up, you'll just die. So it is kind of forgiving in that sense, though. You start to be maneuver pretty well against like enemies, so you don't get into this situation. But like, but there is a mode where like you'll just die in one hit no matter what.
I just wondered, do you play the shoot-up games from Cave?
Yeah, I played
I was just wondering, do they have like a true last boss if you could get to the last boss without continuing or without dying? Actually, depending on the game you're
I
playing.
don't know. I don't know if they have that mode because I've definitely died on the way there. But there is like a sort of true final boss at the end of your second playthrough for reasons.
Because that's the thing with Cave games. It's like, oh yeah, if you could get to the last boss, you get to fight this new extra 4.
I haven't been able to like beat like the do a whole playthrough without dying once because some of the bosses are really tricky. And the animations go really hard for those bosses too. Like they're like the visual fidelity of this game and the animations is
What
quite
can
a
I
feat.
say? It looks pretty good. I just bought it right now, playing a few seconds of it. My first expression is it's Giga Wing mixed with Gladius. I think
Yeah.
I think that's my impression so far.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it.
Last week, we had the chance to talk with Adam, who went hands-on with the Chrono Cross remaster. We also talked about the Chrono Cross remaster, obviously back when it released in April, talking about Cullen's review of the game that we put up on the website. And while we have plenty of podcast conversations about Chrono Cross specifically, we haven't had a chance to talk about the Radical Dreamers add-on that we received in English for the first time officially with the remaster. So we probably won't spend a ton of time on this, but since Adam just recently finished both Chrono Cross and the Radical Dreamers, I kind of wanted to give him just a window here just to kind of wrap up his thoughts from last week about the game after the discussion we had to incorporate his findings and his feelings on the Radical Dreamers add-on. So Adam, first of all, for people like me, who I know that this was appended with the game, but I don't remember exactly like how it's attached to the Chrono Cross main game. Can you just kind of describe what Radical Dreamers is and then how it plays and what your thoughts were on it?
Yeah, so Radical Dreamers came out before Chrono Cross. And so you could kind of say it was the original sequel to Chrono Trigger. I don't know if it was ever like billed that way, like yes, it's a sequel, but it's kind of like the position it slotted itself into. And you can kind of think of it like a prototype for Cross. And it features some of the same characters like Surge and Kid. But, if you're talking about like canon or whatever, it effectively got replaced by Chrono Cross later. So now it's more of like this sort of curiosity, like an alternate story or whatever, that has some of the elements of Chrono Cross, like in terms of its premise and like characters, but it's not an RPG. It's barely an RPG. It's more of a text adventure sort of game with like text adventure RPG-ish battles. So I never played Radical Dreamers. This is its first official English release. It had a fan translation for quite a while though, so many people have played it already. But here's its first official release. So it's a short game. You can beat it in like 3-4 hours, in a night. And it's a text adventure game. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure sort of thing where you get some dialogue on the screen. There's some art that goes with it. The premise of the game is that you are the Radical Dreamers. So led by Kid, you are Surge, and Magil is there, or Magil, or however you pronounce his name, and he's important. And you three are invading Lynx's manor. And so this is sort of similar to like the Viper Manor raid in Chrono Cross, although that's not, it's a little different in terms of like the context of things. But you can kind of see if you play both, like how one kind of was a prototype to the other. And it's sort of like a choose your own adventure book where it's like you meet a hallway. Do you go left or do you go right? You meet a door. Do you open it or do you continue on? You're in a room. What do you do? Sort of thing. And in terms of the style, I like it quite a lot. The art is nice. It's got kind of this old school, like, it kind of reminds me, I know this was a satellite view game, but it sort of reminds me of like the early kind of DOS era sort of art style in a way. It's hard to explain with words, but it's got a really nice art style. The localization is really solid, I think. It's the type of game where you're reading the whole game, so it better be good to read. And I think they did a really good job at this. And I know Cullen said the same thing in his review. And overall, it's just kind of a nice experience, not very long, only takes a night. And in terms of like just plot, if we're just talking plot, like things that happen, I actually prefer this to Chrono Cross just because it feels more focused and more like, specified on like this event that happens rather than Cross, which I think kind of gets a little bit out of control in some places in terms of the events that take place in that game. So I'll take this sort of pared down, focused version as my preference. But overall, it's the sort of game that it has multiple endings depending on what you do. You can get into like bad endings, or I'm not sure. I think you might be able to just fail entirely if you lose all your health, because you can lose health.
I think my only pet peeve about that game is just the combat segments. Every choice you make, it sounds like you got hurt or some crap like that. It's like everything is bad. It's not like, how are you supposed to?
It's not really a combat game, It's just it's sort of you'll be like you encounter a skeleton. He swings. Do you dodge or block? Sort of thing. So you can follow a guide. I actually did, to just like, how do I get to the ending of this? Because it's kind of like a puzzle in a way where you go to one room, you meet a character, they tell you the keys in this other room, so you go to the other room and an event happens, and here's how you get the key, and then sort of things like that. So I did follow a guide just to kind of like, I just want to experience the story and get to the end. So I did. But it's just an enjoyable experience. I think you just got to go into it kind of with the understanding that it's a prototype to Cross, and it has some similar themes and events that happens. I don't know if the one thing that was actually kind of interesting to me is like some of the music in Radical Dreamers. I recognize it from Chrono Cross, and to me, it's like, oh, it's a new version of Kid's Theme or whatever. And it's like, actually, I guess it's the original version of Kid's Theme. It came out first. But it was kind of nice hearing some of the music that I associate with Chrono Cross in this game with a slightly different twist on it or take on it. But, I think it was smart that they included it. But it's more of just kind of a fun little side addition. Someone asked me when I talked about this, elsewhere, like, is this a good reason to buy the Radical Dreamers edition? I think it is a good reason, but it may not be like, if this is the only thing you're interested in, it's may not be like worth it just for that.
I think it is just worth it just for that, just because the other game sucks.
Hey, the remaster is only $20. Yeah, the remaster is only $20, so it's a pretty good price, relative to similar ones. But I think it was a fun experience. So,
Did you follow the guide on rpgsite.net for it?
I did. I even tweaked it a bit.
Oh. you kind of like quality checked it as you went
It
through.
wasn't wrong. It was just like, oh, maybe this could be a little clearer.
It's pretty hard, like quality checking guides. You could just have like one slight error and it completely throws you off.
But there's a new scene, or it's not really a scene. If you beat Chrono Cross and Radical Dreamers in this remaster, there's a new like 2-minute, 3-minute like dialogue scene where some character is talking about some other characters, and there are theories about who's talking about who. I know we have an article on our page that Alex wrote up.
Speculation.
He thinks it's talking about Magil from Radical Dreamers, who was originally designed to be Magus from Trigger, or Janus, who, in the whole scheme of things, is honestly a really important character in the Chrono whatever timeline.
In the Chronoverse.
Yeah. And, like, it's hard to know if this is just for fun. Is it teasing something? Is it wishful thinking on Square Enix's part? Like, maybe eventually we'll be able to follow up on this. But there is a new little scene that you can get that...
And you have to be bold to get it.
Around.
Yes. I love Square Enix's like teasers of stuff that will never come to fruition.
The World Ends With You. The World Ends With You one came.
Okay, you
through,
got.
Although it feels like, we talked about this before. This is kind of off topic. It feels like the way they teased The World Ends With You 2 and the final product seemed to be like they changed course somewhere there.
You remember a little teaser called Final Fantasy Type 1.
Yeah, there's Type 1. There's a teaser. There's a teaser at the end.
Level 10 free.
Remember when Birth by Sleep Volume 2 was going to be a PSP game?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
There's a Type 1 teaser. Gosh. There's a teaser at the end of World of Final Fantasy Maxima. This is spoilers for World of Final Fantasy. Skip ahead 20 seconds. The two twins end up separated. So like, will we ever get the conclusion? Will we ever get a World of Final Fantasy 2? Like Square Enix does that sometimes.
The teaser at the end of Crisis Core, and that is like the furthest in the Final Fantasy VII timeline.
No, you're talking about Cerberus.
I forgot which one. Yeah, there's Cerberus, yeah. But
Genesis escapes from the crystal. He does a weird kind of ugly smirk and then flies away.
Okay, it'll be uncovered in Ever Crisis.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't even have to license to get Gak back.
I don't know. I don't know. If we ever revisit
will Genesis show up in Remake 2 with a different face?
Oh my god! Yeah,
he'll just show up as just like a voice. Or something.
We love our Square Enix teasers that never come to fruition.
But yeah, there's a new little like Chrono teaser. So yeah.
We'll follow up on that in like 8 years and see if it
stay tuned. Bookmark this podcast and we'll
revisit in 2040.
We told you.
And as for the last game that we're going to talk about at this introductory section, James, we talked last week, had got his Steam Deck, and he talked about some of the experience that he had with it and setting it up, and the games that he's been able to get to work well with it. One of the games that he's been playing recently was one of our highlights from last year, and that is NieR Replicant. So I believe, James, you played the original NieR when it came out on the Xbox 360 a decade ago, and you maybe touched Replicant a little bit?
But yeah, so I bought this remaster at launch, and I'd intended to play it, and then I don't remember what it was, but like another game came out that kind of like got its hooks in me, and I just never really got back around. Yeah. Also, I remembered the PC port, at least at launch. I don't think they patched it. Was kind of janky, and like you needed Special K to make it a steady frame rate and not have it have weird slowdown and stuff.
Yeah, like you did if you weren't like specifically like running like a 1080p machine, and like they optimize it for a very very core set of specs, and like I just happened to fall into that, and like that's why I was like I don't see anything wrong.
So anyways, this specific game runs basically perfectly on Steam Deck somehow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So here's the funny thing. Most recently, Valve just mainlined the previous beta patch that allowed you to set the refresh rate of the Steam Deck screen manually, which you might think, what's the point of that? Well, there might be some games where you can get plenty of frame rate above 30 FPS, but if you're playing that game on a 60 hertz screen, you're going to want to cap it at 30 if you can't reach a steady 60, because frame rates above 30 FPS and below 60 FPS aren't going to have proper frame pacing on that screen.
You'll get jitter. Right.
So one thing that Valve has done is that you can now change the refresh rate of the display from 40 hertz to 60 hertz and anything in between, which means that even though you can't get a steady locked 60 FPS in NieR Replicant, you can cap the screen at like 45 or 48 hertz and then cap the frame rate at that, and you get a smooth image with proper frame pacing, and it doesn't slow down. So as long as you have the frame rate counter off, and remember, this game was originally like sometimes 30 FPS on PS3 and 360. So like 48, like a solid 48 FPS at like medium settings. I'm not complaining about that. Works perfectly. Like I'm really having a good time with it.
How far are you?
I haven't gone to the time skip yet.
Okay.
I'm gonna be there soon. I believe the time skip is right after it's Facade, right?
After the desert place. Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
it should be pretty soon.
Yeah. What do you think so far of the remake and like just how everything feels?
Is it a hot take to say I prefer the combat in Replicant now with the remake over Automata?
I agree with you. I think me and Cullen like agree on that.
The one thing even though I don't think the original NieR's combat's better than Automata's, I always kind of had a soft spot for how like meaty the combat felt in the original.
Yeah.
And so you basically get that same feeling here, but it feels smoother and there's more like action. Well, it already had action elements, but it's like it has some of that NieR Automata flair, but still maintains like the feel of the combat from the original. And it's like, man, I really like this.
Yeah, like I like how weighty it feels because like Automata is cool and very slick, but like your weapon hits don't feel like impactful in it. It was like very focused on like air juggling.
Yeah, it's not quite more style than substance, but it kind of leans that way a little bit. It was still great. It's just that Replicant kind of has a little bit more weight to it.
I still prefer Automata just because there's more customization in there. That's for me.
Yeah, like the module system is pretty cool in Automata for sure.
But yeah, especially considering the original state of this game. Well, no, I was going to say considering the original state of this game on PC, I wouldn't have expected it to run. But actually, NieR Automata was the game that led to the development of DXVK, which is basically at the core of Proton. So I guess it makes sense that they would have made sure that this game was working on Linux, because the types of people that made this project a reality were like, I want to play NieR Automata on my Linux PC.
So DXVK
it's
converts DX11 calls to Vulkan, right? Or do I have that backwards?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I was shocked that this was officially supported. It's listed as playable on Steam Deck by Valve, and it's definitely playable. And it's one of those games where the only reason it's not a verified rating is because sometimes the game wants you to input text and you have to use the shortcut to open up the on-screen keyboard, which that's a technicality. I'd say it's definitely feeling like a verified game, and obviously if you're going to play it on Steam Deck or you want to play it, I can say it's a set it and forget it situation. Just set it to medium settings, cap the screen's refresh rate to 48 hertz. You're golden. You don't have to worry about slowdown. You don't have to worry about judder. It's just a smooth experience.
I forgot. Does Steam Deck support like per game settings?
Yes, and actually, it'll remember what your refresh rate was for each game. So
Wow. Okay.
normally, I just have it at 60 hertz for most games, but as soon as I boot up NieR Replicant, it'll cap the refresh rate at 48 hertz because that's why I set it in the that game's performance
I
settings.
wonder if anyone's like made a database yet. I don't know, like maybe like if like for like a Steam Deck database of like these like are the preferred settings for like this game.
They haven't done anything specific like that, but if you go on ProtonDB, the developers of that site updated it so that there's like a separate like Steam Deck section for the compatibility reports.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever people like report how a game is working on Linux, they can say, "Hey, I'm playing this on Steam Deck," and you know that they played it on Steam Deck because they specifically made it that it'll only say that you have a Steam Deck if you log into the website from a Steam Deck.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
So it's not quite the same thing, but if you're looking for games and you want to know how they run and maybe it's not listed as supported on Steam, you can just check there and it'll give you a good enough idea. But overall, I think I said this last week, but I've been really impressed with how like legitimately good the compatibility has been so far. Like I feel like I was already fairly positive about it because back in the day, I was like a daily driving Linux, and I was like, oh, I'm sure they can get a decent chunk of games working. But it's really something else to actually be using a Steam Deck and just seeing games that, quite frankly, I never expected to work nicely, just work out of the box. And every day they're still improving it. So
Didn't they just release either was it a Steam Deck update or a Steam OS update just like a few days ago, or was it yesterday or something?
Yes, yesterday was the mainlining of 3.2, the firmware update 3.2, which included the refresh rate uh, editing, and they added the new fan curve.
Oh, okay. That's the big fan curve update. Okay.
I'll be honest, it's a little bit of a tangent, but I won't. I already talked about this game last week, but I was finishing up Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, and I have it on PC, and I was like, man, I wish I could play this in bed. Maybe I'll try that Steam Link app on my phone because I have a phone controller. And despite having a quick connection in my house, I didn't like the streaming quality of that. So now I'm kind of like, man, if only I had a Steam Deck, I could have played this in bed. Oh, or I could have just bought it on Switch, I suppose. If only. Well, that kind of covers us for games we've been playing, as well as kind of gets us into the meat and potatoes of the one of the larger announcements of the week, and that is the full reveal of Trinity Trigger. We did have a couple other projects get announced in the last week. Well, actually, if you include, I'll go into this part first. If you include the Indie Live Expo 2022, we've got a ton of games that we got new trailers for, new features, new screenshots, new art. And if you kind of go to rpgsite.net and go to the news section, we've got like 9, 10, 11 different titles that were showcased at this event or in parallel with it that we don't really have the time to go through here. Absolutely every one of them. It would just end up being a soup of titles. But I guess I will say, for the people that did cover these or pay attention to the Indie Live Expo, was there any title from the expo that you think we should highlight here at the front?
You can go first, Adam.
So, there are I make an effort to cover like a lot of indie RPGs and like when they're coming out and whatnot. Try to give them some visibility in a way, especially ones that look interesting to me. One that has been in development for a while that I at least like how it looks is called Jack Move. It's like this kind of like pixel art style cyberpunk sort of game that has this sort of old school turn based JRPG kind of framing to it. And like I have no idea about like the characters or the story or whatnot. But at least I like the color scheme. I like the pixel art style. So it's like, all right, I'll keep an eye on this. It's supposed to
And
be
what was
coming
this
out
game
this
again?
year for Switch and PC. It's called Jack Move.
Okay.
They recently put like an icebreaker prologue
There's
demo.
a free demo you can play. I'm not really a demo person.
Me too.
So even though I'm interested in this game, it's like I'll just wait and see. It's supposed to be coming out soon, so
Yeah, that one looks cool for sure. The one there's actually two that really caught my eye. The first one is called Meg's Monster. This is by the developers of they're called Odencat, and they developed another adventure RPG called Bear's Restaurant. Meg's Monster is really interesting because of like the premise behind it is like you control like this near immortal monster. Like this monster has like 99999 HP, and like is like kind of sort of like an ogre, like a blue ogre with like horns sticking out to its side, but like one of its like arms is like a crab arm. And like I guess the story premise is you find this lost girl like in the underworld, and you quickly figure out that this girl, whenever she cries, she like brings the apocalypse down. Like so as she starts crying, like you start seeing like meteors getting hurled in the air, and like just things are just like going bad if she cries. So like in like your so like the story focuses on this monster trying to protect this girl and trying to find her mom with her. And like during like battle encounters, they sort of have like that Pokemon like perspective of like you facing off against the monster, but like the monster is like in front of the girl, like protecting her, and like and the girl has like sort of like not an HP meter, but has like it functions like one where I guess if that her quote unquote HP meter goes down, she'll start crying, and that's a game over because you've brought on the apocalypse on the world, and it's a game over. So you have to balance between like dealing with the monsters or the enemy in front of the monster, and also like making sure that like the girl is okay. When one of the battles can shots like attack, guard, and toys. So like I assume you can give her toys in battle to like kind of comfort her and soothe her. Like that's a really cool, interesting premise for an RPG. So I really like the look of that.
It's almost like a comfort meter where you got to keep
Yeah.
her in a certain like mind space in order to prevent a game over.
Yeah, and the other one is coming. I think what was it? Like I think end of July. It's called Lost Epic, and this game has been in early access for about a year now. And Lost Epic is sort of like it's almost like a vanillaware S game. It's by the developers of the Earth's Dawn, which sort of had a similar look, but it was more very sci-fi. Uh, and this is like a more of a fantasy look. It's a 2D action RPG. And this one just looks really cool. Like it has a very fast, fluid action. Has like a sort of like a skill tree for your characters. They've been very like active during early access, and I've been keeping an eye on it. It also supports up to 3 players in online co-op, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, it's very much one of those like very fast 2D side scroller actions, sort of like a fantasy version of like say a Muramasa.
Yeah, it does look Vanillaware-esque. One of the other announcements from this week, we don't have a lot to go on here, but we have some kind of striking pieces of artwork, and this is a new project from some of the talent behind God Eater and Freedom Wars. That's Toshiyuki Atsui. He has announced, the studio had been announced, his own company named TVT Co. Limited. It's an abbreviation of Tokyo Virtual Theory, and TVT has been working on a new engine. Where is it?
Theory Engine.
Theory Engine, that's what it was. I was looking for it. And they've announced a new project that's going to be using this engine, currently only known as Project Shaz. TVT has published a new press release that describes this project and one other, along with some details on the Theory Engine, as well as a couple pieces of artwork, one that's more of a key concept art for the game, and one that's showing kind of a roster of characters and kind of the design behind each of them, kind of specifying how different this cast of 7 characters it looks like so far is shown. So we don't know a ton about this Project Shaz, but we do know a little bit about the some of the talent behind the game and about the talent working behind the new Theory Engine. Not only do we have Yasui from the God Eater team working on it, we also have Katsushi Satake and Daisuke Emura, who are working on the programming team for the engine. And we shared this to our Twitter account, just the key concept art for Project Shaz, and a lot of people seem really receptive to it. We don't know a ton about premise of the game. We obviously don't know anything about like platform release date, anything like that. But it's just that it looks like the whole goal here is for like fast, seamless multiplayer action online gaming sessions that are going to be kind of supported by this bespoke engine for this type of game that obviously might feel like God Eater and Freedom Wars in flavor. I know that a couple of people here have played some of the God Eater games. Has anyone here played Freedom Wars?
Yeah, I played a little bit of Freedom Wars. That's a really cool like Monster Hunter Light that released on the Vita, and like you're like kind of like a prisoner like in a cyber virtual like kind of premise. And I remember like the hook behind it was like you have like sort of like these like chains that you can like wrap monsters around and like hook onto them in battle for that game. A lot of people were really liked it. They definitely found it's like diehard loyal crowd that still praise it to this day. It was a very different sort of like Monster Hunter like back then. So I definitely can understand why people are very excited for this project. It's we don't really see much like many games these days that like chase after the Monster Hunter formula anymore. Like back then, you had your Tokiden, you had your Soul Sacrifice, you had like the Final Fantasy variants. So like that whole like genre has like really died down because like Monster Hunter is like kind of back and in it again.
Also, it just seems kind of rare nowadays that studios develop bespoke their own engines because they want to like tailor the capability to their style of game. We just see a lot of times people will kind of drop down and use Unity or Unreal. So the fact that TVT, this new studio, is completely focused on developing an engine and creating games utilizing it seems like a little bit, I don't know if anachronistic is the right word, but you see less and less people doing it these days. So that in alone, I think, is kind of showing a level of ambition that this TVT co is kind of targeting. The other game that they announced in this press release is Project Jabberwocky, which is a rhythm action game. Yeah, I love that name. It is a rhythm action game that is being helmed by Hiroyuki Kotani, who was as far as I can tell, the director of Patapon. So
let's fucking go.
I knew that. I was wondering if James was going to chime in there. So my guess is that we'll go ahead.
I wonder if it'll be an RPG because technically Patapon 2 and 3 are RPGs.
Oh, you heard it here first.
Yeah, in a certain respect, they do have like sort of upgrade systems for your little Patapon.
Yeah, like you have gear, you have levels for your Patapons, you have like formations and whatnot. It's more like a strategy RPG with rhythm elements, but still, I mean, hey, maybe we'll be lucky and this will have RPG elements. I don't have a reason to cover it.
Yeah, they did mention like this the TVT studio is like currently recruiting staff members for development. And the new action RPGs or action RPG they're working on is aimed for a worldwide market, so it's not just only for Japan or anything. So that's really a note. And we're all very interested to see like how this shapes up. And like you were saying, Brian, like less and less Japanese developers develop their own engine. Like the only other one that comes to mind immediately is like Falcom with the new engine they're using for their new games.
I mean, Capcom does everything on their.
Well, Capcom's also like huge,
but even like Square Enix gave up on.
Well, did they give up on Luminous or like?
Luminous is still being used for Forspoken, so we'll see.
I mean, I think it's one of those things like, well, we poured a lot of freaking money into making this engine. We can't just like use it for like one or two games.
But yeah, most Square Enix stuff is Unreal or some Unity. So
yeah.
But yeah, so TVT Studio from former God Eater talent, as well as some talent from Freedom Wars, .hack, and Fate Grand Order. That's art director Kususaga Ren. So yeah, well, it'll probably be a while before we see more of this, but it'll just kind of be an interesting thing to keep an eye on in the upcoming years. This is an announcement that Josh spotted and wrote up the news article for up on the site. And this is for a game very much in the style of Square Enix's HD 2D set of remasters and releases. But this is from Xiameng Studio, who is creating a wuxia-style pixel RPG that is either named or codenamed Wandering Sword. I don't know if that is the full title of the game.
Yeah, on the Steam page, it's codename Wandering Sword.
So yeah, so we have a Steam page for this, and the name then is Codename Wandering Sword. And we got a trailer for it, we got some screenshots, and it looks very much like the HD 2D implementation from things like Octopath Traveler and, of course, Triangle Strategy, as well as some 2D art to match it. I don't know if we've got a talent behind the 2D art here as well, but Very interesting game that looks like it's kind of designed in the style of, specifically out of all the HD 2D games that have been released or announced, in the Octopath Traveler style, but with a few specific callouts here, such as that the game will support multiple endings depending on the choices you make. It will have a similar style to Octopath Traveler when it comes to the presentation and traversal through the maps as you explore the regions of China in this period of time. And it just looks really neat. It looks pretty damn well polished. We do not have any sort of release date, or obviously we've got the Steam page. I don't know if there's any details here about console releases at all, but we do know that it will support English as well as simplified and traditional Chinese. So we do expect this to potentially be a worldwide release, or at least come over and be supported in English in some fashion.
Yeah, and then one of the key like features they're touting too is like there's like a combat system the way that you want. They have like a turn-based style to the combat system, or you can switch it to like a real-time combat mode. So they really want to cater to both crowds of like you can either play the combat like turn-based style, or if you're into action RPGs, there's like a more combat heavy or like action heavy oriented style, which is interesting. I'm interested to see how that manifests. Like in the trailer, they show bits and pieces of, like the turn-based style. There's like grids on the plane as you're battling. So we haven't really shown off the real time combat system yet. But it's really interesting to see more and more of these upcoming RPGs like kind of cater to like, hey, if you're a fan of this style, we'll have like both styles of like RPG for you.
And it's just kind of interesting that if you add this to the upcoming Dragon Quest III remaster, and of course Live Alive, which is only a couple months away, it seems like there really is quite a growing list of this style of game. Those of us that are nostalgic for like the 16-bit era and games around that style, and kind of reimagined in a more modern context with modern rendering techniques. So this Codename Wandering Sword is built in Unreal. I don't know if they actually specify the HD 2D engine, but it's clearly heavily inspired by that, though it is built in Unreal as.
I imagine they can't say
alongside.
HD 2D because that's probably a patent for
That's my
Square.
thinking too. Yeah.
Yeah. So but it's definitely like similar techniques for sure. But yeah, this is really really cool. It's like wuxia's like there's been a few like Sword and Fairy and other sorts of games that like dabble into that style, but never like in this sort of presentation, like traditional JRPG pixel style. Like you don't see much of that these days. So this is really really cool.
And the press release and the information for this game seems to paint a strong emphasis on the denizens of the world, because they mentioned that as you encounter NPCs across your travels, they have a friendship affinity system where you can interact with them and eventually kind of learn like martial art techniques and potentially even get weapons from them, as well as a line here about NPCs having their own behavioral AI and kind of have like schedules or something that can be in some way interfaced with the player. So don't know exactly how this can be implemented yet, but there's something that they're kind of putting in the forefront of their initial marketing for it. So it'll be interesting to see like how that plays out within the context of the game.
Yeah, it's very ambitious, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. And that on top of the fact that they're saying that the game will change based on the decisions you make and things like that. And another announcement, this is a port announcement of an older game, but something that I kind of put up here at the front of the podcast because I do think it is an interesting topic. We did have, was it last year? Yeah, late last year, we had covered and even wrote a review for the Switch port of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the original game from 2003, not the remaster. And we got this week potentially the expected announcement of a port for the sequel. So on June 8th, the Switch will get a port of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords. Potentially not too surprising, this is being developed by Asper Media. And one thing that they have noted here is that they have announced that after release, they will have a free restored content DLC.
Yeah, so when I first saw this announcement, the very first thing I said when someone like linked the trailer, I was like, well, the PC version has all this modded content and like restored content, tweaks and whatnot. Like, do you really want to get it on Switch? And then like, oh, they actually addressed this, that there is going to be this restored content DLC. It's free coming after launch. And so like a lot of people seem to be really, happy about that. Because otherwise it kind of feels, like gimped in a way if it didn't have any of that. Because for those who aren't aware, the original game is kind of infamously unfinished. Literally, just kind of ends. Like, I mean, like I'm not even trying to be like
It's very abrupt.
snarky or whatever. It just
Yeah,
kind of
that's-
like you go to the final planet, like the boss is just like fight me, and you fight them, and then it ends. Over the years, like literally, has it been almost 2 decades now? Lots of people, probably maybe a lot of people, and multiple efforts have been putting together restored content, basically taking as much like from found in the assets of the game, like official dialogue or scenes or artwork or whatnot, to try to put together this restored content. And it's become a very popular mod for the game on Steam, almost like many people will almost call it like a requirement to play the game now. So the fact that they're including it in this Switch version as sort of an official release is really cool. Now, I got to be clear that we don't know if this restored content DLC is going to be exactly the same as the mod on PC. I imagine it won't be exactly the same. It'll probably be some like packaged up version of it. But the fact that they're including some form of restored content in an official manner for the Switch release is very cool, even if it's coming after release sometime.
Yeah, it's gonna be like a free DLC, so you don't have to pay for it as well. So that's really interesting that like this is like now like an official thing. Seeing this, what used to be just like a mod like back then, it's like, oh, we've really come a long way with like the original release of KOTOR 2 and like all the efforts, and like it's one of those like weird things, like even though it's like still like rushed, obviously it was still like a pretty fantastic game up until
it
that
is.
point.
It's really good. Like I actually prefer it to the first one, even without like an ending. It's a lot more interesting, and it's like a take on Star Wars that is pretty different from any other take on Star Wars.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's got Chris Avalone's name still tied to it, but
It is what it is.
yeah,
Yeah, but
And it is kind of nice that this restored content, whatever form it takes, whether it's a packaged up version of this current existing mod or their like interpretation of it, it's a DLC that you can kind of opt into. So obviously, depending on, again, we kind of have to be careful with the language here because we don't know the details of it. But the mod as it exists on PC, some of it is like touching up like the Malachor sections at the ending where there's like the dialogue exists in the game, so it was like mostly complete and it's stuff that feels really natural. But then there's some stuff like the droid factory that kind of is hinted at but was never really approached in the game, and it feels a little bit more mediocre and more slapdash, where it's like, does the game actually get improved? It's kind of like a movie isn't immediately better if you add in all the deleted scenes. They're deleted for a reason. They might affect the flow or not be like themed properly or things like that. And one of those things where it's like, well, if you want to just play the game as it released officially back in 2004, you can do that because you just don't have to opt into this content mod. But it'll be interesting to see to what extent, if any, they might have polished up or potentially newly developed parts of this mod. We don't know. So we'll have to see. And it's June 8th, so not too long. And do we know if Scott's interested in covering this as he covered the original Switch release for the first game?
Not sure. I have to imagine he's at least interested. I don't know if he has time though.
Oh, okay. So we'll see if we can get someone on this to see what this ends up looking like as it releases on Switch with this new official DLC pack of something from 2 decades ago in terms of stuff that we've had to put together through fan efforts over the last 20 years.
We're still waiting for more news on that KOTOR 1 remake as well when they introduced that PlayStation stream. So
I'm not surprised that that's still pending because it felt like it was a ways off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Knights of the Old Republic games, like obviously they're sci-fi, but they're really like based in like at its core like Dungeons and Dragons dice rolling in terms of gameplay. So if you go in like more used to more modern like action RPGs, that is not what Knights of the Old Republic is. It's dice rolls. So presumably the remake will be more like as an action RPG, like as we know them in the modern day. That's my assumption.
I do have a note here to follow up on an article on RPGsite.net that we called out last week, and that was the listing of the potential RPGs for the new PlayStation Plus premium service from the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, 3, and Portable. And we talked last week about how the existing confirmed list of RPGs for the site was pretty darn thin, with actually none officially announced for PlayStation 1. We did, however, learn in the last 7 days that the first Wild Arms seems to be coming to the service due to a store page listing on the Hong Kong PlayStation Network store. So Wild
Well, to be
Arms.
clear, the service is already live in Asia.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
You could buy this and download this.
Oh, okay. So. However, I do have a note here, and I think other people have been following this a little bit more closely than me, about the specific PlayStation 1 emulation on the service, about whether or not it is the NTSC or the PAL 50 hertz version of the game. Maybe I'll hand this over to, I don't know, James about. He seemed the one that in our discussion preceding the podcast.
Let me at him.
Let me most passionate about this.
All right, so, before we get dive deep into this, let's for people who don't know how 50 PAL and NTSC. What's PAL? What's NTSC? What's 50 hertz? What's 60 hertz? So James, just give us a general overview first of what's the difference between PAL and NTSC, 50 hertz versus 60 hertz refresh rates.
In the ages long past of the late 70s, early 80s. So the way that the electrical grids work in North America and Europe differ in the sense that in North America, it's divisible by 60. In Europe, it was divisible by 50, and that determined what sort of signals TVs could use. And I believe there was some small differences in regards to resolution. So even though PAL TVs at a time could only refresh at 50 hertz, they had higher resolutions and stuff like that, but you never really saw that in games. That's not a problem today. People have gotten around it. It's the technology's improved that you're not going to see a major difference in modern games.
Yeah, everything standardized at this point in time, obviously. And for people who are concerned about frame rates, this is kind of one of the big defining factors between 50 hertz and 60 hertz, right? Of what are the maximum frame rates theoretically these refresh rates can support.
Yeah, and it would be one thing if, much like as I was talking about earlier with the Steam Deck, it was an option. If a game can't quite hit 60 FPS, capping the refresh rate for a smooth response at 50, that's cool. That's not what this is. On PS4 and PS5, if you want to play these new PlayStation 1 classics, a bunch of first-party Sony releases are using the PAL versions of the game, which capped at 50 hertz or 50 frames per second. Which means that if your monitor or your TV does not support 50 hertz, it's not going to be a smooth frame rate. The frame pacing is going to be terrible.
This also affects lower frames. So if it has a cap of 30 frames per second, on NTSC, it would be substantially lower, 25 frames per second, because of the 50 hertz refresh signal.
And to make matters worse, because somehow they made it worse. Well, before I even get to this, can I just say that Sony learned nothing from the PlayStation Classic? Nothing, because
these were things that already existed when they first released, and they never fixed it. They never fixed these ROMs. They're just you're okay, just put the PAL versions and then we're good. So this has been an ongoing problem with them. It just it has surfaced again because of this new service. Because people were thinking, okay, since we're having to pay more now, they're gonna do something to improve it, right?
Josh, on God, I'm actually convinced that this is Jim Ryan just manufacturing consent here, because he's the one that said, "Oh, nobody wants to play these old games. They're not going to want to play them when they're like this." Okay, so it was bad enough with the terrible frame pacing, but Sony released a patch which was supposed to improve things. What they did was, instead of replacing the ROMs, they made it so that there's interlacing between the frames. So it looks like a smooth 60 FPS, but there's terrible, terrible ghosting on every single frame.
Yeah, their solution to this was a very, very loose band-aid of saying, okay, they display at 60 hertz now, but they're still using like the base 50 hertz ROM. So as a result, when you're like trying to move a camera in the game, for example, it'll look massively blurry when you're just trying to like move the camera around in a game, because like trying to like brute force that in that method introduces ghosting in those frames. And as James was saying, every time like you say like try to move the camera, it's interlacing every single frame in the
So
process.
is this similar to like motion interpolation on TVs, where it's like adding artificial frames, and that's where you get ghosting, or maybe similar to that?
Yes, but worse, because at least with a TV, generally it's interlacing a 30 hertz signal to 60 hertz, which means that there's going to be less ghosting because it's just it divides evenly.
Mm-hmm.
But 50 hertz to 60 hertz, it doesn't divide evenly, which means that there's going to be ghosting. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
By the way, just to make it clear, I was just double checking if this was verified. So a writer over at VGC, Video Game Chronicle, Andy Robinson, did kind of confirm that the classic lineups, including Wild Arms, along with Everybody's Golf, Jumping Flash, and Karushi on the Asian version of the store are based on the PAL version. So if you download Wild Arms from the Asian store on this service, it is the 50 hertz version, like confirmed.
But if you download Wild Arms for the PlayStation 3, it's fine.
Yeah.
Dig out your PlayStation 3.
There you go. Bring it back. Bring it back. We got to go back because modern Sony isn't doing it. Isn't getting it done.
Just go hack a PlayStation Classic or something.
So to make things even worse, because of course they can get worse.
Yeah.
There is a video that before Digital Foundry, I forget the name. Let me really quickly find out who exactly did this video. It's that other guy on YouTube that does like performance like analysis of games. Not NX Gamer, but the like. I think it's.
So yeah, I know a lot of the news coming out of this the Sony Classics is done. Like I know VGC has like actually like purchased several of the games available on the Asian service and have checked them out, like to see what frame rate is it running, and oh wow, look at this ghosting. So they've been doing a lot of looking at that.
Oh, and at least they bit. So I'm guessing it's they're Spanish or something. But yeah, they did a video, and it's bad enough that there's the interlacing. It's a one size fits all solution. So regardless of if you're playing these PlayStation 1 games on PS4, PS4 Pro, or PS5, they all have an internal resolution of 1440p. And to make matters worse, even on PS5, there's frame drops on these PlayStation 1 games. There's frame drops on these PlayStation 1 games. Like massive ones. Like they're showing like this, I think Toy Story 2 PlayStation 1 game, and it's like dropping down to like 35 FPS when it's like a 60 FPS game.
Oh my god.
That's one of those games that you're lucky enough that it's the NTSC version.
Oh boy. Well,
it's like I'm just gonna say it because everyone's saying it, and Sony needs to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
You can install RetroArch or DuckStation on a Series S, which is weaker than PlayStation 5, and it can play all of those PS1 games at 4K 60 no problem.
Yeah.
So unofficial like PlayStation 1 emulation on an Xbox console is much better at emulating PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games than the PS5's official solution for it. Sony, fix your shit.
Yeah, they need to really like rectify this because they're expecting people to pay more for this type. This is the type of service.
And I'm reminding myself of the tier. It's $18 a month.
Yeah, it's the most expensive tier, is what I was going to say, to get the classics.
So unfortunate, but hey, Wild Arms is on the service now. We didn't know that a week ago. I'm trying to be positive. We did get a lot more.
The story is, buy the games separately if they let you, and then obviously emulate them on your Xbox.
We did get a couple more trailers this week for some games that had been previously announced. And this first one actually is still a teaser in spirit, and that is for Dragon Quest Treasures. So this is a game that we kind of had known has been in development for a while, and we didn't learn that it was Dragon Quest Treasures was going to be the title for it until like basically a year ago, last May.
Yeah.
And since then, that was during the Dragon Quest 35th anniversary event, and this is the game that is starring a younger Eric and I forget if it's Mia or Maya from Dragon Quest 11. And we had the initial announcement last year, but kind of silence since. Well, today we got, or in the last week, we're reporting on today a teaser trailer for the game for Dragon Quest Treasures. It doesn't show any new like release date or platforms, but we do have just some new footage showing the characters and showing kind of the premise of the game. It's just 45 seconds long. I don't know. It's just kind of fun to see that that this game is still in development, that we can hopefully expect to see it soon. But
yeah, the end of the trailer does say that like there will be more information on the game coming next month in June. No specific date, but soon enough we'll get to see it. And one of the things, like when this first was announced, this is a title that's slated for a worldwide simultaneous release. So any info that we get is meaningful because we'll be getting it at the same time as Japan when it releases.
Before we got this, remind me, Adam, before we learned that this was Dragon Quest Treasures, wasn't it originally slated to be part of another existing Dragon Quest spin-off series? What was the name of that series?
A long time ago. By a long time ago, I mean like 2018, maybe. During a stream for something else, they showed artwork with Eric and Mia saying this is going to be a new Dragon Quest Monsters game.
Okay.
There was never like a trailer or even like a title for it, other than they did say it was going to be a Monsters game, and then it disappeared for a while. And I'm pretty sure they said in interviews that like they just kind of repurposed it. Like now it's Treasures, kind of that game became this, and we never got a platform for it. But they said we're gonna get new news next month, so maybe it'll show up at one of these summer stream things. So whether that's Square Enix or Summer Game Fest or somewhere else. So
yeah, it looks cute. It looks charming. I've never played a Monsters game, but will be interesting to see what platforms it arrives on.
3DS.
And in similar Dragon Quest news, this is a little bit more of a footnote, but the original Dragon Quest Builders is now available on Apple iOS and Google Play. It is on sale for $21.99, so kind of a premium title on the service. But you can now play Dragon Quest Builders on mobile. And
it's actually a really good fit for mobile.
Here's a question. I'm pretty sure, except maybe for Chow, everyone. Well, no. Can someone else that has an Apple TV check if it's playable on Apple TV? I don't have mine plugged in.
Oh, I don't have mine plugged in. It's a good question. I don't know, but yeah, this surprise release of it was part of the 36th anniversary live stream, which had like huge, series creator Yuji Horii. Like a bunch of that live stream was like him touring the Dragon Quest Island amusement park in Japan, and that was all good. As part of this mobile port of the first Builders game, there's actually some new features in it. Like obviously you'll have the standard overhauled UI to support touchscreens better, but they actually added several quality of life enhancements that the first Builders never got. Like you can it supports range placements of when building things, so like you don't have to be right by a block to like place it. You can do it from like a distance now. And then one of the main grievances of the first Builders was it never let you craft things in batches, which made things a lot more tedious than they needed to be. So they added that feature into it. And then they added like an undo button in this game too. So like if you misplace something, you don't have to like manually go to it and like deconstruct it. You can just like hit an undo button and then you're good to go.
Are these things present in Builders too?
I think ranged and crafting in batches are in Builders too, but I don't think Builders 2 had an undo button. From what I remember. But yeah, I mean, this is a really, really good fit for mobile for people who want to just have like a chill, fun time like building shit. While like they're on a train ride or something. Like this is one of those games. It's very simple. Take your time, like go do what you want to do type game. That's cool.
Yes, just a fun surprise that it's hard to be anything but think that it's just a cool option for people who want it.
Yeah, it's on there. I just checked it.
There you go.
Oh, wait, is it playable on Apple TV?
Chow says it's on there, so I don't know. Chow, is it playable? Go spend $22 right now, Chow.
I will buy it if it's playable on Apple TV.
I have no idea.
It hasn't been ported to PC, and this is the most updated version of it.
Is this like if it displays on Apple TV with a price at the Apple TV store? Is it like confirmed to be playable? I don't know.
Yes, I believe so. I believe so.
I only have
Yeah,
an iPhone.
that doesn't say anything then, unfortunately.
Mm.
We'll research it for next time. But yeah, cool to have. I didn't realize it never came to PC.
You can emulate the PS3 version that never got localized.
Or you can emulate the PS4 version. I mean, they got PS4 emulators.
We got the expected third trailer for the third house, the Golden Deer, the Leicester Alliance for the upcoming Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. I don't really have anything to say here other than the fact that this feels like me trying to look for things to like whine about. The characters across all the three houses are playable, and I'm starting to see a lot of there's Leonie and what's the purple-haired
Lawrence?
his name? Lawrence, yeah. Like they both are horseback characters in this game, and like they play really similarly. It looks like, only with just some different flavor to like the animation. So I'm wondering if I'm starting to see like some characters that you know you can only portray a horseback cavalier wielding a spear in so many ways.
Maybe
To be fair, they probably
sorry.
play this similarly in the game they come from. Also,
Yeah. Well, we kind of talked about like, well, when we see the upcoming trailers,
Well,
we're
when
going to
you think
start
about
seeing
it, like,
characters that play alike.
well, since you can like class change in this game, like I think movesets are dictated by classes instead of like characters.
Which would be kind of, true to Fire Emblem's current rendition anyway, so it might be silly to complain about that. But got the final of the main house, and now this is the one we expected, of course. So now the thing we're not sure of is that if we're going to see like the Church of Saros
monastery group,
get a group, or the Ashen Wolves from the Cindered Shadows DLC, or as well as like some of the more spin-off specific characters like the Mysterious Mercenary.
We'll see. I don't know. I like there's already like kind of like a stacked list for like a Musou game, like playable characters for modern Musou game at least. I don't know. Well, we'll see. Those are very much question marks from a person who's like played a lot of these sorts of games. But I sort of like some of the new designs. Like I like how they gave Raphael like a fucking bandana.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'm like, where's the bandana's other iterations? I kind of like hair down Marianne. I know a lot of my friends don't. I'm like,
hair down Marianne and hair up Hilda.
Yeah.
Ignat still looks like a dweeb.
Yep.
Yeah. Lawrence looks mostly the same.
Lysithia looks mostly the same.
And Leonie hasn't grown her hair out yet. But yeah, it's cool to have all the main three houses casts and have the new art styles people have created. Obviously, the comparison tables for pre-time skip, post-time skip, and spin-off designs, and some cool creativity there. We did get 2 trailers for the upcoming Honkai Star Rail. This is the turn-based RPG from Hoyoverse/MiHoYo that was announced late last year. We talked a month ago about the character trailer of the character named March 3rd. We did get another character trailer.
March 7th, guys.
7th? Oh, I forgot the name because I got the date wrong. March 7th. I'm sorry. And then we got another. We got the yes, because it's the same thing. We got another character trailer for the character name Serval, who is kind of like a brash rocker type, like musician who fights with a electric guitar, like literally, as far as I can tell, an electric guitar. And
the most hilarious part is the Japanese voice for her is Ami. They got a well-established singer to voice her.
Is this the case where they designed the character for the voice actors?
Who knows? But I mean, they got a well-established singer to voice her for the Japanese voice.
Well, they obviously there's an English trailer and a Japanese trailer, and like the English trailer as well. So I'm wondering who they're doing to provide the singing / character voice for the English character. I don't think it's been announced.
It has. The English website does have all the English VAs.
So who is the English VA for Serval? Let me look this up if I can find it.
Voiced by Natalie Von Sistine in English.
Don't recognize the name, but I think she held the singing voice for the trailer. The trailer's kind of fun because it's like while she's like performing the character. So it's kind of an interesting, cool take on a character trailer that they're allowed to do because of the theming of this character. We also did get the opening cutscene for the game was posted onto the YouTube page for Honkai Star Rail. And
a good chunk of people have been playing I think it's the second closed beta test, so they've been going through that and checking out the game. Seems to be
you can see a lot of footage from at least the first closed beta test. I don't know if it's maybe the second stuff's coming up on YouTube as well. I watched a couple an hour or so of the footage from the first beta test that they held a bit back.
They still haven't announced a release date for this game, but I'm sure it's coming up fairly soon after their current closed beta test. This has to be coming out soon.
I was going to ask, do you remember in Genshin Impact on how much betas that they made players play before the actual game was released? Do you remember?
I mean, this one has like a it's not as a grand scope as Genshin though. Like this is not an open world exploration type deal. Like the scope of this is much more restrained.
Yeah, I know it's a lot smaller, but I just wonder. It's like I remember the beta; they went through like 2 betas, I think it was. For
Genshin took forever to come out.
I know it took forever, but they had like 2 betas that people could get access to before the game was released. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about gacha games, there's one thing that I forgot to ask. Did you get the chance to play Ni no Kuni?
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up because I was like, I don't know if no, 2, hell no. But I've heard a lot okay, the thing that initially drove me off from this, like despite like murmurs of it having blockchain integration into the future before it released, I was like, okay, the company behind it is already planning to integrate blockchain in some way into the future of it. I'm like, okay, like I want to try this out before it gets into any blockchain integration type stuff. So Tuesday comes, and then I'm like thinking, should I download the PC client to like play this game? One, like I was already hearing like people talk about the PC client. It's like it's really bad on the PC client end already because you need to like install the game first on a mobile device to like make a login for the game to link into the PC client so you can log into the PC client. So that's already one big obstacle that I'm like, okay, there's already
break one.
And then the next one was like it didn't have like keybind support, so that it didn't have controller support, and it doesn't have like you can't switch up keybinds on it either. So I'm like, okay, there's already like a hassle. 3, like by default, it has like all the auto shit like on, so like it'll do like auto questing, auto like everything for you, auto combat for you, and like apparently turning those off are like it's like kind of a pain in the ass too. So I'm like, okay, there's already 3 big things that I'm like, I already don't want to like engage with this. And, like, there's like a lot of other shit, like surrounding it. And then I read up, as more people were getting into it, like what their findings were. Apparently, Netmarble I guess integrated like the blockchain crypto stuff already into the Western client because there's a shop in the game where it has best in slot PvP gear that you can only buy with crypto in it. I'm like,
crypto bros, man.
I don't know about this.
Hey Josh, the deal keeps getting worse every time. Did you see the part where like the first like community event through their official Discord was having them, hey, give us a great review? It's like, yeah, they immediately closed that when people are like, we're gonna report you to Google.
Yeah, that shit is actually illegal. Like to hold like community events, and like their first event was like leave a positive review for us on like the App Store or the Google Play Store, and we'll give you rewards on it. And like no, that shit's illegal, dude. So like you actually cannot do that legally.
I read up on Noisy Pixel. I think had a piece on this, and apparently it's. Even the crypto stuff is awkward because you're like using you buy one cryptocurrency, then it's like converted to another, and then it's converted to like something you can use in game.
Oh my god!
Just like what?
Yeah. So this thing I do not want any part of. Like once I heard like everything I know up to now about that, I'm like, never mind. I'm good. I'm good. Hell no. This is like it looks fun, but. I'm not a fan of those games. It's like, well, maybe there's a decent game, but A, B, C, D, E, F, G get in the way of it, and they're all pretty significant.
I know it's a slow period for RPGs, but Jesus Christ, I'm not that desperate.
Did you give it a try, Chow?
Oh hell no, man.
Yeah, I was thinking about like giving it a try, but after how things have gone down, and like now it's like one of those things where like. Before, like, I'm not trying to like be like
cynical.
Not like cynical, but it's one of those like weird fears that I have that like, oh, does this PC client also have like shady shit behind it? Like when you install it, because it has like some sort of crypto integration hook into the game. Is it gonna
your
like
computer becomes a
yeah,
Bitcoin
yeah,
miner? Right up.
exactly. Like I'm like, it doesn't have that's it's one of those things like that was one of the big things that like made me go, I'm not gonna install this. You know what? No. And now in retrospect or in hindsight, that's like the right call because I didn't know they also actually integrated crypto from the get go with the Western launch. It's like, oh my.
Well, let's see if this game will die like Luna does. We'll see how it goes.
The
Biggest
bummer that
crash.
the last Ni no Kuni game ever made is going to be this.
Is it really that much better than the last Ni no Kuni game ever made, being Ni no Kuni 2?
Ooh.
Uh,
What's up? No, at least Kuni 2 didn't have crypto integration, so
and it has the best
True, though.
production ever, though. It has President getting isekai. Okay.
it did have
If
like
Ni
a
no Kuni 2 was as a JRPG was only an hour long, it would have the best story of a JRPG.
Mm-hmm.
it's true. It's true.
That was probably my favorite podcast last year. Was all of us learning how that game opens. Well, maybe not all of us, but several of us learning how that game opened.
Oh, it was lovely.
So unfortunately, Ni no Kuni Cross Worlds has some things you should know going in.
Yeah, and like the if you want to give it a try, go for it. But I'm only here to inform people of what it has, and they can use that info in however way they want to.
Yeah, we're not stopping you. I mean, it's like going to casino. You can go in there, but they're not stopping you.
So in the last week, and this is going to be something I'm going to have to partner with Josh on, there was a Gundam Game Fest. Was this like a streaming event or some sort of...
It was like a live stream, like it was a recorded thing, and then they had like a premiere date. So it was just like a live stream. Like it wasn't all live; it was like clearly pre-recorded beforehand.
And as it seems like the main headline from this Gundam Game Fest event was a worldwide release date for the upcoming SD Gundam Battle Alliance for August 25th of this year. Is this a game that you've been anticipating? Is this more of a strategy RPG, or what is SD Gundam Battle Alliance?
It was an action RPG.
I was mistaken. Yes.
Yeah, from Bandai Namco. It's sort of like sort of like Gundam Breakers, sort of like Dynasty Warriors Gundam. Chow, did you play like the G Generation games on PSP, like G Generation Wars and Overworld?
I played. I think I played Overworld, and I played the UC one. And the spirits count? UC spirits?
Yeah, I mean, like if you played Overworld, so basically Overworld like basically mixed like every Gundam like timeline, like whether it was UC or AU, and then like in that game, there are like break events where like they're like switch up like to the enemies that you face. Say like in the first Gundam, it's mostly like an encounter with Char, like at this battle against Amuro, but instead of Char, it's like maybe like an enemy from Gundam Seed, like say like the Baku, during that one episode of Gundam Seed, and like there's a break event that, like alternated like the timeline of that game and like switch up the events. SD Gundam Battle Alliance basically takes that very concept and turns it into an action RPG where like it switches up like the enemies from one timeline into another. So one of the examples they chose in that trailer for it was when during the first battle of Rambaral in his goof and him saying this is no Zaku boy, and he's as he's about to leave to Amuro to battle, like he gets switched up like mid like jump into like the Barbados instead. So you have to fight the Barbados like in a gym, like early on. From that what that trailer implies. So it takes that break phenomenon concept. Instead of a strategy RPG, it's now an action RPG. So it's looking really cool. Honestly, I really like the trailer's gameplay. Not so much like the translation, like how they're marketing it, like what sort of like text they use to like describe the game in the trailer. But I'm sure like the final game's like translation quality will be better because that's just marketing materials. But it's looking really neat. They're introducing like obviously the break concept and how this game will allow up to like 3 players online co-op, and you can upgrade like your units, like their health, their attack damage, and it seems to be really like aiming for like a pretty diverse roster in it. Like one of like the announced units they showed off was This was leaked like a week earlier on the Steam page, but they announced like the pre-order bonuses of like the Musha Knight and like Command SD Gundams in it, and like these were you can like unlock these later in the game, but these like are early unlocks. There's like although the pre-order bonuses are the Lube Unicorn Gundam, the Cao Cao Wing Gundam, and the Sunjian Gundam Astray from the Sangoku Soketsudan series, and the Night Gundam. So those are the pre-order bonuses, and
Kind
then
of obscure for the
yeah,
DLCs.
yeah, and then it'll have like they announced it'll have a DLC season pass down the road and adding more units, and so forth. So
Well, I know what I'll do if I play a G Generation game. Every time I play a G Generation game, I like to disable enemy mechs and capture their parts and use it to build different mechs. I think that was like a charm of one of the games, if I remember. I think it was the Game Boy Advance one that you could do that.
yeah, and then the Musha Knight and Command are going to be in the game itself. It's not like DLC or anything. So I mean, this is looking really cool. This is for PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox, the Xbox systems, and Switch and PC. So it's coming everywhere.
Everywhere to everything worldwide on August 25th.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. The launch date trailer that gives a pretty damn good look of like how this game will play, and it looks slick. I'm really looking forward to it and playing with friends on it. So I'm excited. I'm excited. The other Gundam games that were shown off in the Gundam Games Fest was for the Gundam Evolution side. This is the Gundam Overwatch game that ran its closed beta test on PC a few weeks back. They announced the date of the console beta test. Let me go pull up exactly like when are those for people who are interested. This starts on June 23rd and runs till June 28th. It'll be on PS5, PS4, and the Xbox systems. This console beta. The application periods have already started. So the first round started on May 26th and will run to June 12th. And then the second round of applications is going to be from June 12th to June 25th. They seem to be pretty open on like who they're letting in to this, but they did note if there are too many applicants, they'll just do a drawing instead internally.
Get canceled. Rip.
But so
would they add like new different mechs to try out for the console beta, or just what?
No, it's gonna be the same units, same balance. It's just to test out like the networking side, so it's not gonna have like new additions to the console of like to the previous PC closed beta. It seems to be all the content's gonna match up. I assume we'll hear like new like stuff getting added to the game after that console beta test is done and before release. I'm sure that's when they'll start announcing new stuff for it. So that's cool. Also for the other Gundam game we talked about during the Gundam Games Fest is Gundam Battle Operation 2. That's been on PlayStation systems for quite a while now. So they were just saying, hey, we're adding Delta Plus from the Gundam Unicorn series in it. That's already there. And then they also revealed that the Kshatriya from Gundam Unicorn is coming to that game. They still have not announced a new date for the beta test of the Steam version, because the previous one that they tried to run, the very first like time slot for it like broke the game so hard that no one could log in for multiple hours. Like they couldn't find a fix to it, so they like postponed that beta test indefinitely and like canceled the other sessions of it, and they have not like set a new date on when those are gonna when that's gonna be held again. So unfortunately, we don't know the status of the Steam version of that game as of yet. And then at the very end of the Gundam Games Fest, they unveiled one more unannounced new title for the game for the event, and that is the newest entry in the G Generation series, SD Gundam G Generation Eternal. It's back, strategy RPG. Let's go, and it's coming to iOS and Android devices. Hell yeah!
So, as someone who hasn't played these, I take it that these games have not typically been on iOS, Android devices.
No, this will be the first one on for that series. They're usually on handheld, like PSP. or the most recent ones were on PS4 and Switch. The Genesis and Cross Rays. They were pretty cool games. This one is interesting because this is combining the UC and AU timelines, like how the old PSP ones did on like an Overworld. And in Genesis and Cross Rays, they had like a divide where Genesis had only Universal Century units, and then Cross Rays had like alternate universe units. So they had that divide. They never really crisscrossed on that. So this one, it is aiming to combine like all those series plus more into it. So like G Gundam is going to be in this one. It's going to have like stuff like Gundam Side Story, Missing Link. It's going to have like stuff from every. It's aiming to like include every single Gundam series into it when they first announced this. So like whether it was a TV anime, a movie, a manga, a novel, they're trying. So like I posted up in the news post like the initial series they revealed in it, which is a lot of like what you'd expect, which is like the original Gundam, Zeta Gundam, Gundam Double Zeta, Gundam Wing, Gundam X. Then you have more out of the way stuff like the MS Igloo type stuff and Missing Link. But one of the weird things in this is like it's definitely going to be a gacha game for sure because like the initial screenshots have like a gacha currency, but no one's really sure yet what you're gonna gacha for because in the feature list on the official website for this, it says you can obtain new units, warships, and characters by completing stages and via development. And one of the weird things that would makes G-Gen generation weird as a gacha title is because the game has one of its like defining traits is sort of like a Pokemon system that are units where as you're leveling up, let's say the original Gundam, at level 2 you can turn it into another like unit, or at level 4, level 5, level 7, so it can turn into like other units. So it has like a branching path almost of like what you can develop it into. So it's like the whole G Generation series, these strategy RPGs, like the kind of one of the main gameplay hooks is like constantly developing units into other units and like advancing those like kind of like unit like branches. So they're constantly evolving into other units in them. So that system is still going to be in this G Generation Eternal mobile game, which is like, and that system is kind of like in like it's kind of like intrinsic to like be an antithesis to a gacha game because if you're not gachaing for units because you can develop those units into other units, so you don't have to like gacha for those other units, then what are you like rolling for? Are you rolling for characters? But it already says you can obtain characters through like completing stages. So no one's really sure yet of like how this like gacha system will manifest in this game yet. But I'm a sucker for this game, these kinds of games. I'll definitely give this game a shot. I'm very interested in how they will handle this. The brief footage and gameplay screenshots that you see of like the strategy RPG gameplay is also it's it has your typical fast forward auto system like in other mobile games, but the thing that really interests me is like it seems like the units have like a decent weapon arsenal that they like they have like 3 to 4 like different weapons that they can use in battle. And like why that like sticks out to me is because Bandai Namco has done this with another series, the Super Robot Wars series. They have a mobile game in Japan called Super Robot Wars DD. It is, tries to emulate the strategy RPG gameplay of that. But the main thing that is kind of scummy about that game is like you earn the units in that game through progressing like stages and the characters. So you can earn those units. You don't have to like roll for them. But what you're rolling for in that game is attacks. So like you'll have like a rare, super rare, and super secret rare SSR like attack. And so like at any given moment in that game, you only have like your basic bitch attack and whatever attack you rolled for that unit. So they only have like
so you're thinking about that's how it might be implemented into Gundam G Generation Eternal.
So I don't know. So I don't know exactly if that's how it's going to be implemented. Maybe, quite possibly. But it's already shown like in one of the screenshots that like the original like or one of the Gundams has like 4 attacks on them, and seems to be a very feature complete like unit. So I don't know if like is that what you're rolling for like additional attack armaments on them or what. So who knows? I don't really know. Because that doesn't make sense either, but they very well could be like that. But I don't know. This is one of those like products is like I know how G generation works and I know like how these systems interact, and I'm really curious to see how they implement this into like a mobile gacha game framework. And of course, I'm a real big sucker of like, oh man, they're combining like every Gundam series together in one package. Let's fucking go, because I have a simpleton brain like that when I see Gundam games. So there's definitely this and SD Gundam Battle Alliance are like the 2 Gundam games that like really caught my eye during this Gundam Games Fest. Obviously, I'm still very excited for Gundam Evolution, but I've already played that game. I already tried that game. I already know I want to play it, and I'm waiting for like the full release now.
Yeah, we don't have any details of the release other than that it will be free to play with some sort of gacha microtransaction element. The last announced game that we'll be covering here is a game from publisher Fly High Works called Banchou Tactics. I don't know a lot about this game, but I believe that Josh covered the announcement post for this. So what is this game, Josh? I don't know much about the developer, or if you were looking forward to this game before it got announced, or like what this developer was working on, or if you just kind of saw it after the fact and thought it was interesting. What is Banchou Tactics?
Yeah, this came out of nowhere for me. This is being published at Fly High Works, and Fly High has published like a few things on Switch, but I'm not really too familiar with Fly High. But Banchou Tactics is a pretty interesting premise. They're working with developer Secret Character, and they also like mentioned that like Secret Character's investor, it's Aramata, is also assisting development on this. They're a Bangkok-based small studio. And they're basically combining like the genre of like strategy RPG, like your typical strategy RPG of like exploring the grid and isometric view, with the world of Japanese high school delinquents, banchos. And you've seen this character archetype like in 13 Sentinels, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
They always have a pompadour.
Yep, they always have a pompadour. So they showcase the premise of this, like there's these 3 warring schools who have been at war with each other for some time, to like their bancho cultures were very much about like showing off that like you're the strongest, this is our turf, don't step on it, and so forth. So they've shown off like the first screenshots have like battles going on like in Japanese like arcades, a basketball gym, school, like a train station, and it just it seems really cool. They like they don't detail much about the characters except that you're playing like this like idea. It's like, wow, that's like such a novel concept. They have they didn't really go into depth about like the gameplay systems of this game, but there are you can like develop like characters as they level up. You can develop their HP stat, attack stat, defense stat, and SP stat. They have like EX attacks, which are presumably like unique skills and abilities each of the characters have. And the trailer for it just really shows off a lot of like cool things about it. It's really I like it's just a neat concept to me. I don't know what about it really like draws me into it, but I saw it. I was like, oh man, I really want to try this game out. Like whenever it releases, it's like releasing sometime in early 2023, and like the Steam page for it. It's only announced for PC for now. I don't know if they're gonna bring it to other platforms, but the Steam page for it says it'll support English, simplified Chinese, Japanese, and Thai. And yeah, it seems like a really neat, cool idea.
Yeah, and the our news page for it had quite a few impressions, like the little thumbs up and smiles of it, and then I think our social media tweet did as well. Yeah, it's just a very stylish game with a kind of a unique premise, so it's kind of easy to get drawn to it and say, like, yeah, this is pretty interesting. It's only announced for PC so far, and as you said, it's early 2023 is the slated date.
Yeah, and it definitely carries that for people who like the Kunio-kun River City Ransom games. Like the visual style is very inspired by those types of games, which is always pretty cool. They're pretty adorable. And then they also listed the Crows manga and Final Fantasy Tactics because it's a strategy RPG, and it's the only strategy RPG in existence, obviously.
Yeah,
as
that's a
inspirations
stretch.
for the
It's like
game.
it's isometric, I suppose, and grid based. Does that make it mean it's inspired by Final Fantasy Tactics?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if there's like any like cool like positionals or like environmental like interactions in gameplay that will, maybe it'll have those systems in it. Who knows?
Yeah, it looks really fun. Maybe it'll be one of the sleeper hits for next year when we get to see it again. At the tail end of this podcast here, we just have a couple release dates and a couple little follow ups of previously announced things. Temtem is finally releasing out of early access on September 6th. Obviously, it's been in early access since like January of 2020, at least. So it's been around a while, and it's finally going to get to its formal 1.0 release in a few months. We did get a Western release date announcement for the third title in the Yomawari series, Yomawari Lost in the Dark. Actually, we did not get the date announcement other than that it is coming west this fall. This originally released in Japan in April of this year. So we do know it'll be out west before the end of the year in both the US and EU. Anyone here play the other Yomawari games?
No, but I've always wanted to. I just never got around to them. I've attended
played-
like old. Go for it, James.
I've played like a bit of the first one. It's funny because like the first Yomawari has, we were talking about insane openings in video games. The first 3 minutes of Yomawari is actually traumatizing.
Oh my god!
It is a shocker. I actually beat the first game. Actually,
That's Yomawari Night Alone was the first one.
Yeah,
I never
and,
played the sequel though.
like Chow, like back me up here. When I say that the first 3 minutes of Yomawari is traumatizing, I'm not exaggerating here.
No, he's not. He really isn't. And yeah,
Yeah, I just wanna. I have never gotten around to those games, but I really want to. I've attended like old like anime expo panels about the game, and like the creator of the game is like very like obviously very enthusiastic and passionate
Oh,
about the
man.
game. And, like,
it's a pretty short
I
game.
remember that. I
I shared
remember that. It was kind of fucked up because like didn't the creator say that that part of what gave them the ideas for some of the monsters was like them returning from work like overworked and super tired or something?
I think so. Like along those lines, yeah. Like a lot of the inspiration for the game is like just like driving home from work in the night and like conceptualizing the game and like placing like a form to their fears. And they spoke about it like very like cheerfully and joyful. I was like, this is quite the panel.
Well, I don't know. Like when people make horror stuff, I mean, to their perspective, it seems like a comedy. It's like when people filming The Grudge, the actors over there, it looks like a comedy scene, but whatever that was shown on screen was a horror segment, right? So maybe they're just reliving that kind of experience. But yeah, I highly recommend the first game. It's not really long actually. You could probably beat it in one sitting. I actually remember I beat it in like one sitting.
And the people saying like even if you like didn't like felt like the first game was too simple, apparently the sequel really like added on a lot of like cool mechanics that people really enjoyed. So like people who are into the Yomawari series like really like it.
And Yomawari 3, this new one, which is Lost in the Dark, coming out this fall at some point. It's a new story, so even the press release specifies that you can jump right in at this point if you haven't played Night Alone or Midnight Shadows.
I love
This
how
one-
they've announced the localization for Yomawari 3 before they announced Galleria. Yomawari 3 just came out in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like that. The Yomawari 3, as I was writing up the news post, like there's like an interesting mechanic where like I don't know if this was present in the past Yomawaris, where like you can have like the character like close her eyes and like when she closes her eyes, like she'll erase her presence to like other spirits. But so like you have to like kind of like wander in the dark almost, like get past like certain dangerous situations.
I want to say that's in one of the previous games. I think it was in 2. I don't know if it was in 1. Chow, was it in 1?
I don't think so.
Yeah, that sounds familiar though, so I think it was in 2.
We've
But
talked,
anyways,
obviously. Sorry, I was going to go on to the next topic.
I was gonna
You have
say,
one more
it's
thing to
obviously this game's gonna come announced before Galleria. I mean, there wasn't much to localize in the first game, and I don't think it will be the same applies for the sequels, probably.
This gets priority because it has less text, and therefore
Yeah, I mean, text. I mean, it's the same. You know, your workload's gonna be massive. Of course, that thing's gonna take longer. So
expect Galleria in 2027, maybe, says Xiao.
We've been
You don't want
talking a
to
bit in the
everybody
last couple of weeks about Eiyuden Chronicle with the release of Rising. Obviously, looking forward to next year's Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. Not a lot of news here. Obviously, the Kickstarter has been kind of frequently updating, as Adam had it detailed in one of our previous podcasts about all the characters and things like that. But Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes. They did announce that it will be releasing on Nintendo Switch. Up until this point, it had kind of been a little bit unclear because they didn't know the state of what Nintendo's console options would look like upon the release of Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, whether there'd be a Switch 2 or some follow-up that they'd release on instead. But in a Kickstarter post update, Rabbit and Bear has confirmed that 100 Heroes, regardless of what Nintendo does in the next year or two, 100 Heroes will release on Nintendo Switch. So kind of a small
I think
footnote.
some people had like the wrong idea on this, or they're like they don't know if it'll run on Switch. It's not so much that it's they're trying to avoid the problem that some Kickstarters
On the
had
Wii
where
U.
they said it's going to come to Wii U, 3DS, and Vita. Then by the time the game is ready, those consoles are like dead and buried, and then they are sometimes canceled. Everyone anyway. So basically, they're just being cautious. They're like when they did the Kickstarter, they're like, we're gonna put this on a Nintendo platform. That maybe Switch, it may not be Switch. We don't know yet. And then basically now they're just saying, okay, Switch is still in vogue. We couldn't have known this, 3 years ago or whenever they did the Kickstarter. So we are going to put it on Switch. That's all it is.
I feel like it was kind of obvious though. The Switch was actually a massive success compared to the Wii U. So
well, they didn't know how long the development was going to take either. So
and also we don't know like all those rumors last 2 years.
Yeah, but even with that in mind, it's like even like the PS4 and they're still making games for PS4 and porting them over to PS5 because not everyone has switched on to the PS5. It's just like I feel like it's a no-brainer.
I think there's like a little bit of like A and B here, where like yes, it is also like at the time of announcement during the Kickstarter, there's no way they could have known how long development would take. Plus, they don't know if like what Nintendo's plans were. But there's also a certain factor of you've heard like development studios time and time again having to like think about face challenging development issues of like porting games to Switch because like there's a certain like standard that they developed the game on originally, and then when they tried to port it over to Switch, they had like found like new technical hurdles that they had to come across. And like, okay, how are we gonna like what compromises do we have to make to this game and porting it to the Switch in order for it to run it at a decent
I feel like they just want to avoid the mighty number 9 fiasco. They just don't want to go for the same boat as Inafune, announcing ports to all these different type of consoles.
Yeah.
And
remember, guys, it's still definitely coming to 3DS and Vita any day now.
On my way.
When I'll check it when the App Store is alive.
But yeah, but that's obviously good news to people who wanted to play Eiyuden on Switch. It's still going to be a very, 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 very popular console next year. It's not stopping anytime soon. So this is the right call for them to just like kind of clarify it now and say, yeah, we're committed to bringing this to Switch no matter what. And that's good. They finally cleared that up because there's still very much like, are they still going to do it type deal? But yeah, this in no way, shape, or form like it's still coming to the PlayStation 5 and 4 and the Xbox Series and the Xbox One and PC. It's still slated for next year.
Yeah, it's just confirming in Switch, which is kind of a small detail, but a welcome one for those that were waiting for it and planning to play it there.
I would have backed the Kickstarter if they had that Switch announcement there.
And the final bit of news here really isn't news at all, but maybe just the fact that this is a headline at all might be teasing something. And that is that Capcom has opened up a fairly fancy new website celebrating the 10th anniversary of Dragon's Dogma. And if you go to this website, dragonsdogma.com, it is starting May 2022. Dragon's Dogma is celebrating its 10th anniversary. It has a 10th anniversary message from the developers, basically thanking all the players of the game, because obviously over the last couple of years, it released on Switch. It had the Netflix series. Been, no news of a sequel at all. I guess I should just kind of state that outright. There's not even any tease for upcoming news. It doesn't say like, stay tuned, we're going to be announcing something, but they're saying that we're very excited for this 10-year celebration and can't wait to get you all involved. So I feel like the language about this 10th anniversary celebration for Dragon's Dogma is like very carefully written. And
yeah, like, I almost put it in the news post, but the Japanese version of the director's message does outright imply, oh yeah, we're excited to show, we're excited for the future, basically. And it's like, yeah, I wonder what that
means. Yeah. Well, who knows? Hopefully the wind is pushing us all towards Dragon's Dogma 2.
I understand that reference. Yeah.
But I'm very excited to see what comes out of this. It's really funny to see, the chronology of like the Western timelines versus the Japanese timelines, because obviously they can't include things like Dragon's Dogma Online and the Western timelines because it never released, in the West. So like one of our most recent Dragon's Dogma projects that the West saw was the Dragon's Dogma Netflix anime. Hell yeah!
Yeah. It was a whimper, apparently.
I forgot it existed.
Netflix anime.
Yeah, I forgot it existed until I went to this site and they're like, oh yeah, the Dragon's Dogma. And I remember watching like at least 3 episodes and I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Well, my favorite little nugget of this is that they're sharing like, follow our website or Twitter. By the way, we have a freshly arisen Instagram channel. Like, so now there is a Dragon's Dogma game Instagram. Like 10 years, like just didn't exist until this 10th anniversary celebration. It's only got one post that is just concept art from the original game. Which I just think it's fun. It's like, would they really make this, me just being stupid, but would they really make a new Instagram page for a 10-year-old game just for funsies? I'm not sure. We will obviously speculate on that.
2 confirmed.
Yeah, of course.
I can already hear Alex being like, "All right, guys, put up your best ideas on what would you like to see in Dragon's Dogma 2."
I would like to see
an announcement, guys.
Infinite stamina outside of combat would be nice.
The moon. Take us to the moon. I know you wanted us to be there in the first game. Take us to the moon.
Oh, God.
I do want to say that I do think that obviously publishers should just be able to celebrate anniversaries without the expectation, like they must be announcing something, like it's 10th anniversary. We got to learn about a new game now because that's how this works. But just the fact that they have been pretty quiet about the game for most of its life. Yeah, and like the specific context of this one.
Yeah, and also it's one of those weird things that like they've kind of built up that expectations themselves. Like a lot of like companies, especially Japanese companies, always announce things like on the anniversary of like it's like an anniversary like celebration period or like on the day of the anniversary. Like they kind of like built that expectation up themselves because they've done it so many times throughout like history. It's not one of those things. It's like it was like they kind of like built up that they self-imposed that themselves in a weird way.
Speaking of that, like there's been some rumblings and hints about what we might see for the Final Fantasy VII 25th anniversary stuff.
Yeah, I remember like the Live Alive like or Live Alive like anniversary celebration of like that stream that showed nothing, but then here we are, current day, current time, we're waiting for a brand new spanking HD 2D remake of Live Alive, and like there's a reason they like announced that live stream like on that's his very specific anniversary out of nowhere because it was like building up to the announcement of that product.
And that kind of covers us for this podcast. And I am always just baffled how we can say it's a dead period or whatever and still go for 2.5 hours just talking about everything under the sun. I appreciate it. It's really cool. It's just always good to know that there's plenty that we can pull from to discuss and to kind of go over, deliberate what we're looking forward to, and obviously stuff we played in our backlogs. So I will give one final shout out here that some stuff that we didn't cover for this week is if you go to rpgsite.net, all the stuff that has been announced in this last week of March, there has been a lot of games announced from the Indie Game Expo 2022. And these games sometimes, it's hard to stand out from the crowd for this. So we were able to kind of cover a couple here to kind of give them some shine and some spotlight. But we do, Adam and Josh and other news news writers have been able to kind of cover all those different announcements that came out of that Indie Expo. So go ahead and give that a look, as well as the stuff about the Trinity Trigger and the other things that we talked about on the podcast here. You can follow RPG Site on all the social media channels, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and of course our Twitter page. And you can join our Discord by going to discord.gg/RPG site or hitting the link at the top of the homepage. And hang in there. We know, at least for fans of RPGs, it's a little bit of a quiet time, but
there's actually going to be like a series of events coming up this upcoming week with the new PlayStation State of Play and a Sega New Project announcement. We don't know if like there's going to be RPGs there, but you never know. You never know.
Yeah, we know based from the horse's mouth that a Final Fantasy 16 trailer is complete. So, we might see it. We'll maybe see that soon. June is almost upon us, and that always seems to be an exciting time for gaming fans, and has been for a while. So hang in there. And until you hear from us next time, stay safe and take care, and we will talk to you then.